Welcome to Cipher Docs, where the world's darkest secrets are finally uncovered. Today we are talking about a man who did not hide what he was. He announced it to the entire world. He was not charming like Ted Bundy. He was not mysterious like the Zodiac. He looked you in the eye, told you exactly what he was, and dared you to do something about it. He confessed to 21 murders. He confessed to thousands of other crimes. But when they finally put him in front of a judge, he told the judge he wanted to kill him too. This is not a story about a monster who hid in the shadows. This is a story about what happens when a society takes a child and destroys him completely. This is Carl Panzram, the most honest killer in American history. Then his story will make you angry, but not always at him. Carl Panzram was born on June 28, 1891 in Warren, Minnesota. He was the sixth child of a poor German immigrant farming family. His father abandoned the family when Carl was very young. His mother struggled to keep the family alive. There was no money, no stability, no safety. By the age of 8, Carl was already getting into trouble, breaking into a neighbor's house, stealing food and small valuables. A desperate, hungry child doing what desperate, hungry children do. He was sent to the Minnesota State Training School, a reform school for troubled boys. He was 11 years old. He thought it would help him. He was completely wrong. What happened inside that reform school changed Carl Panzram forever. The guards beat the boys regularly, brutally, as punishment for even the smallest violations. Carl was physically tortured, humiliated, abused in the worst ways a child can be abused, by the adults who were supposed to be reforming him, supposed to be saving him. He entered that school as a troubled but salvageable young boy. He left it as something the system itself had created, something cold, hard, and filled with pure rage. He later wrote in his autobiography, "I was reformed all right," formed from a human being into something that was no longer capable of feeling anything for anyone. From the age of 14, Carl Panzram never stopped moving and never stopped moving and never stopped committing crimes. Burglary, robbery, arson, assault. Across state after state after state. He was caught constantly, sent to jail constantly. Then in every jail, the same thing happened. Guards beat him. Guards tortured him. Then every time, he came out harder and more dangerous than before. He later wrote, "Every time a man beats me, I make a promise to myself. I will make 10 other men pay for what this one man did." He joined the U.S. Army in 1907, hoping it would give him structure and purpose. Within months, he was in military prison for stealing from the supply depot. In military prison, the abuse continued, worse than anything before. He escaped, caught, was put in solitary, was beaten, finally discharged. By his early 20s, Carl Panzram had decided something permanent about the world. The world had shown him what it was, and he had decided to show the world what he had become. He began traveling the world, committing crimes on every continent he could reach. America, Europe, Africa, South America. Everywhere he went, robbery, assault, arson, murder. In 1920, he stole a yacht. And not just any yacht. He stole the private yacht of former U.S. President William Howard Taft. On that yacht, he committed some of his most brutal crimes, luring sailors aboard with the promise of work, and killing them, throwing their bodies into the ocean. He later confessed to killing 10 men on that yacht alone, calmly, specifically, with no emotion, the way someone might describe a fishing trip. In 1921, he traveled to West Africa, to the Belgian Congo. He hired 6 local guides to take him crocodile hunting and shot all 6 of them. He then fed their bodies to the crocodiles. He described this in his confession with the same tone as everything else, flat, factual, emotionless. By the time Carl Panzram was finally captured and imprisoned properly, he had confessed to 21 murders across multiple countries and multiple continents. In 1928, he was sent to Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary, one of America's most feared prisons. Most men who entered Leavenworth became quieter, more obedient, more broken. Carl Panzram did the opposite. He attacked a prison guard on his very first day, without hesitation, without any provocation. Inside Leavenworth, Carl met a young prison guard named Henry Lesser. Lesser was 26 years old, new to the job, and he did something that nobody had done to Carl Panzram in decades. He treated him like a human being. He brought him paper and pencil. He asked him to write his story. He listened. Carl Panzram, the man who hated every person on earth, was completely disarmed by one young guard who simply showed him basic human decency. He wrote 50,000 words in his autobiography, given to Henry Lesser in secret installments. It is one of the most raw, honest, and disturbing documents in the history of American crime. He wrote, "I have no desire for forgiveness. I have no regrets about anything I have ever done. I only regret that I was not able to do more." He wrote about his childhood, the reform school, the guards, the abuse, without self-pity. Just facts. Just a timeline of what was done to him and what he became because of it. He wrote, "I was once a human being. I can tell you the exact day that stopped being true. It was inside that reform school, and the men who did it wore uniforms and called themselves educators." In 1929, Carl Panzram beat the prison laundry foreman to death with an iron bar. He made no attempt to hide it. He made no attempt to run. He stood there and waited to be arrested. At his trial, he told the judge directly, "I want to be executed. And if you sentence me to anything less, I will kill every person I can reach until you change your mind." A group of anti-capital punishment activists tried to campaign to save his life. Carl Panzram wrote them a letter personally, telling them in very clear language to mind their own business. He wrote, "The only thanks you will get from me is that I wish you all had one neck so I could put my hands around it. Stop trying to save me. I do not want to be saved." On September 5, 1930, Carl Panzram was led to the gallows at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. The executioner approached him to prepare the rope. Carl Panzram looked at him and said, "Hurry it up, you hoosier bastard. If I could kill 10 men while you're fooling around." Those were his last words. No prayer, no final statement, no fear, no regret. He was 38 years old when he was executed. In those 38 years, he had been to prison more than a dozen times, on 3 continents. Henry Lesser kept Carl's autobiography hidden for decades, knowing no publisher would touch it. Finally, in 1970, 40 years after Carl's death, it was published as Killer, a journal of murder. Criminologists and psychologists who have studied Carl Panzram extensively say the same thing. He is one of the most self-aware criminals in recorded history, which makes him one of the most disturbing. He never claimed he was innocent. He never blamed others for his actions. He simply explained, with total clarity, the chain of events that created him. Reform school at 11, abuse by the state. Prison at 14, more abuse by the state. System designed to reform children, that instead manufactured one of the most dangerous men who ever lived. Psychologists call it a textbook case of institutional abuse creating antisocial personality disorder. Carl Panzram would have called it something much simpler: cause and effect. The question that haunts everyone who studies this case is not what Carl Panzram did. The question is, what was Carl Panzram before the state got hold of him at the age of 11? A hungry 8-year-old who broke into a house to steal food. That is the worst thing Carl Panzram ever did, before the system decided to make an example of him. What if the reform school had actually reformed him? What if one adult in that building had shown him what Henry Lesser showed him 40 years too late? Henry Lesser believed until the day he died that Carl Panzram was not born a monster. He believed he had sat across from a man who the world had built, piece by broken piece. 21 murders, thousands of other crimes, confession that fills 50,000 words, and one young prison guard who was the only human being in Carl Panzram's entire life who treated him with dignity. Carl Panzram declared war on the entire world, and he meant every word of it. But somewhere underneath all of that was an 11-year-old boy who just needed one person to be kind to him. This was Carl Panzram, the most brutally honest killer in American history. This is Cipher Docs, and the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, will always find a way out.